Hello, New Covenant Parish. Good to be with you as we begin to look at lectionary text for Sunday, November 29th. This will be the first Sunday in a brand new church year for us, which is always recognized as starting on the first Sunday of the season of Advent, which will begin this year on November 29th. Now, let me review quickly what the season of Advent means in the life of the church. The word Advent means coming. The entire Old Testament period was used by God to prepare Israel for the coming or the advent of the Messiah or Christ. Both words mean anointed one. Christmas is the celebration of the first advent of Christ, the birth of Jesus, the Messiah. The Advent season begins on the fourth Sunday before Christmas and runs through Christmas Eve. Now, historically, this is the season the church has used to help us remember two directions in time as we think about the coming of Jesus. We look back as we prepare to celebrate again his birth into the world. And at the same time, though, we look forward to the day he'll return to finish the work he started, to judge what needs to be judged in the world, to heal what needs to be healed, to gather his people together, to restore God's creation, make everything God intends it to be. So the Advent season is a season of preparation for the coming of the Lord and the fullness of his kingdom. But contrary to the way we tend to celebrate it in our churches, Advent begins not in a spirit of joy, but in a spirit of despair. Humanity's reached the end of its rope. All our schemes for self-reliance, thinking we can make it through life on our own, apart from God's help, have come to nothing. We realize now that we can't save ourselves, and unless God comes to us and helps us, we're lost. And that's the attitude we encounter in the Old Testament text this Sunday from Isaiah 64, 1 through 9. Now, this is a prayer to God from people who are powerless and under oppression. We see in this prayer two main features of Advent hope. One, there's a deep sense of desperation about the situation they're in. And two, there's a deep trust in God expressed here, who can, if he chooses to, intervene and bring peace and joy to their lives, totally transforming their situation. That's the hope of this prayer. The first four verses of the prayer begin with a petition for God to come down, just tear open the heavens like a powerful animal trying to get out of a cage, set loose in the world. And what the prayer asks God to do is to assert his name and sovereignty over the nations of the world seeking to abuse God's people. They want the Lord to show these nations who's boss in the world, make them tremble, put them back in their place. Verse 3 remembers how God had done this before with an advent, God coming down to the people to free them from Egypt. So Advent is a hope that God will once again come to them. And through the performance of mighty deeds like those he did in Egypt, mighty deeds like only, as verse 4 says, only God can do, they might begin again to enjoy a free and blessed life with the Lord. Now, in verse 5, notice the prayer changes tone, turning from a petition into a confession of guilt. The main point of these verses is that Israel has sinned, it's transgressed, it's become unclean and filthy. Unclean means ritually unacceptable. So they become a community where God's presence is not willing to come. To describe them, two images are used by Isaiah in this reading: a filthy cloth, so contaminated no one would dare touch it, and a faded leaf, so vulnerable any little wind could destroy it, blow it away. Israel's failures are keeping the intervention from God they're so desperately praying for from coming, making an advent among them. Well, have you ever wanted something with all your heart? I mean, every fiber of your being, and at the same time knowing it's your own fault that it doesn't come to you? Well, that's where Israel is right here. But look at how they address their broken relationship with God. It's kind of shocking is what it is. Verse 8 begins with the word yet, which means nevertheless or now. So now the prayer is implying they want to move away from all that is past, verse 1 through 7, to a new present tense moment, how they relate to God. So verse 8 begins, it says, yet, O Lord. Now this is the first time Israel's intimate name for God has been used in the prayer, Yahweh. It's like they now want to forget about everything that's just been confessed and focus on a more powerful truth in their relationship with God. Verse 8 says, yet, O Lord, you are our Father. You are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. And you hear what they're doing here. In the two images of Father and potter, Israel is saying, Lord, Don't forget, you made us. You own us. You're responsible for us. We belong to you. We're your responsibility. We're your burden. We're your problem. We're also your treasured possession. You've begotten us. You've formed us. There's some bold stuff going on here. I mean, the pair of images, father, potter, also used in Isaiah 45, is saying that Israel has a claim upon God and does not need to worry about making its own future. The prayer is reminding God of his obligation to Israel. In a powerful way, the prayer is drawing together Israel's deep trust in the Lord with the Lord's deep obligation to Israel. And that sets up the last verse of the reading, which is a passionate prayer, a request, a petition, more intense and personal than we hear in verse 1. They pray, Lord, don't be terribly angry. Don't hold it against us forever. Remember, we belong to you. You can't disown us. We have no other source of help. In 9 verses, the prayer for God's coming that started with all the bombastic, heaven-splitting language ends with a passionate, intimate request. And you see, in the end, Advent doesn't focus on the massive power of God. Instead, it focuses on God's family sense of faithfulness to us. The same kind of faithfulness and solidarity that causes parents to just, no matter what, never give up on their wayward, beloved children. And that is the God we wait for and hope for in Advent. And I look forward to us traveling through the season together this year, my friends. God bless you. See you next time.